Hey, folks, welcome back to Chris Wyatt Reports here on the Indaba Africa channel, part of the Indaba Broadcasting Network. My guest today is none other than Campaigns Manager for AfriForum, Jacques Broodryk. Jacques, hoe gaan dit?
Chris, baie goed, dankie met jou.
Well, I'm okay. A little tired. It's been a busy 24 hours. Lots going on, but thank you so much for asking. So I asked you to come on the program and talk about a couple of things. I saw this very interesting news report a couple of days ago about AfriForum acquiring 2 working dogs, sniffer dogs. And the story I understand is that AfriForum is going to use them or help use them to patrol near the border with Zimbabwe, near the Messina border post. Is that a true story? And sniffer dogs, what's AfriForum doing in the world of working dogs? Are you guys becoming military police? What's happening there?
Well, Chris, yeah, I can confirm that is correct. We have donated 2 trained tracking dogs to our Messina Neighborhood Watch. Now, as you know, Messina is on our northern border of Zimbabwe, and the local residents there are really suffering because of the lack of border control and the crime that leads to. And AfriForum's Neighborhood Watch in Messina specifically plays a very active role in policing parts of that border and bringing into smuggling and trafficking and some of the other illicit activities that's taking place there. And recently we produced a documentary about what exactly our Neighborhood Watch members get up to there as volunteers. And we had such a great outpouring of support from the public that we realized that this was a bigger issue that needed to be addressed in a broader sense. And so AfriForum launched what we call the Border Watch Initiative. Now, we have 155 neighborhood and farm watch structures across the country with more than 10,000 trained volunteers. And many of these structures fall in border areas. So what we aim to do with this initiative is to strengthen all of our patrol units and our neighborhood watches and farm watches in border areas to specifically focus on assisting the communities and assisting law enforcement in stopping cross-border smuggling and things in that regard that we've seen a massive increase in the last couple of years because of government's absolute lack of will to secure our borders. And part of that Border Watch initiative was donating these 2 sniffer dogs to assist our neighborhood watch in Messina.
Well, that explains a few things for folks that aren't familiar with the situation or maybe don't know about South Africa. But there's another point about this we should mention. You mentioned the government's reticence to frankly, to do its job and provide national security and protection against crime for all citizens. You know, there was an organization in South Africa that was falsely maligned by the ruling African National Congress, one that played a role, maybe not so much in the border. Maybe you know more about that. We could talk about it. Oops, just got a reverb there. But this group had 168 regiments. It was spread throughout the country, and the 4 new regiments that were in it before it was disbanded were all Black regiments, which were really the only source of regular employment, even though they're a reserve unit for folks in Zululand. And what I'm talking about, of course, is the commando system, which was much maligned, and it was attributed to the apartheid era, and it predates that by about 3 centuries. Now, the commandos back in the day, I know this because I used to follow this and report on this in the Intelligence Committee, they provided assistance to law enforcement. They did search and cordon operations. They seized tons of mandrax and of dacha, I always pronounce that wrong, marijuana. And I guess I need to smoke it to pronounce it correctly. I don't know. But they also picked up a lot of illicit cigarettes, which would have been handy during the lockdown. You know, they did lots of things. But if the point is they provided a buffer and a reinforcement, even though they're a reserve component that wasn't active all the time, they really provided a degree of deterrence that helped in rural security in particular. The commando system, the disbandment of that, I argued when that happened about 14 or 15 years ago, was going to be disastrous for rural South Africa and borderlands. Do you think that's a fair statement and accurate how I depicted that? And has the disbandment of the commandos helped exacerbate the situation?
I think you're absolutely correct. As we know, the disbandment of the commando system was a PR exercise by the African National Congress government. I could compare it to them changing street names and all kinds of things to try and break away from an apartheid era. But pretty much throwing the baby out with the bathwater in a lot of aspects. So the commando system was very effective. We've seen a massive increase in farm attacks, or successful farm attacks anyway, since that system was discontinued, and it would have definitely made a big difference in playing a big role in border security, definitely. Another thing the ANC government could have done was just to keep the already existing border fence that was there, the electrified fence. If they kept that up to date and they never switched it off and maintained it, we also wouldn't have had 1 ounce of the problems that we have today.
Well, there's another aspect of this too, which I think most people are wholly unaware of. And obviously, you and your neighborhood watch units will be aware of this. And I don't know the current state of it because it's difficult to get news on it. And I'm not in the secret squirrel world anymore to get information that might help me on my analysis here. But for much of the post-apartheid history, and even before that, this was going on, but during the post-apartheid history especially, the South African infantry battalions, of the 7 of them, would play a role in patrolling the border, particularly with Zimbabwe and Mozambique and the e-commerce capital of Africa, Eswatini, the former Swaziland. That's a little joke there, the e-commerce capital. But seriously, at any given time, up through around 2010, 2012, 7 infantry companies would be patrolling those borders. Now, those are long borders. It's a huge stretch, and 7 companies sounds like a lot, but it's not. But it was a huge drain on the South African military's operational readiness, but it was part of their mission. Do they still patrol the border? I've seen reports that are patrolling it. Is it still the same sort of strength, or has it been weakened by other missions or peacekeeping, or what role are they playing in patrolling the border and protecting national security?
I'm not exactly sure on how many soldiers are deployed at the border at the moment. I think you're right. It has had an impact on peacekeeping missions and other responsibilities. But there are still military personnel and patrollers, infantry soldiers deployed on the border, supposed to be patrolling, as well as law enforcement, as well as customs agents. And I have to give credit where it's due. A lot of these people really are committed to their jobs and are still trying to do the best they can. And our volunteers and our patrollers have a very good working relationship with the committed law enforcement officers on the ground. Unfortunately, we do see that there's a lot of political interference. So every time we would have a big success, we'd hit smugglers and they'd lose a lot of cigarettes or whatever they were smuggling, then there would actually be directives being given down to the soldiers and the police officers to tell them that they have to stop working with AfriForum neighborhood watches. So that's very disappointing, and it obviously you have to start asking the questions: why on earth would they want to intervene like that? And we can get into all kinds of speculation, but unfortunately that is a fact. But yes, the military is still deployed there, and there are still a few guys who are trying their best. But unfortunately, there are also a lot of rotten apples who do get involved in the smuggling, who do take bribes to let illegal immigrants in, and to get involved in all kinds of other illegal activities.
Well, it precludes my next question, which was level of cooperation with law enforcement, customs, immigration, that sort of thing. And also, I much appreciate the fact that you're honest and give due credit where it's deserved. The South African infantry battalions, those companies were out there, were doing a lot of patrolling in the past. That's why I didn't know if it's still the case. I know they're out there, but if they're at the same force level, I don't know, because that's a huge commitment. 7 infantry companies for a country that only has 7 infantry battalions. That's a big deal. That's one company from every battalion. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That's a lot. So I don't know if they're still at the level of commitment, but it's good to hear that AfriForum does work with them. But let me ask this question. We see this in Botswana, where I work with the Botswana Defense Force, their anti-poaching operations, and they shoot. When someone shoots at them, they shoot back. It's a dangerous occupation to be a security services member in Botswana because the poachers are armed. What about people smuggling and those coming across the border? A lot of the cross-border traffic we know are Zimbabweans trying to escape the hell that is ZANU-PF's paradise in Zimbabwe. And so they're just trying to look for a better life. That's true. Get across and avoid the Bite Bridge border crossing, which, well, I would cross at another point just to avoid Bite Bridge. That's just a nightmare to get through. But are your neighborhood watch members in any jeopardy or danger, or is this a risk for them? I'd imagine that there's probably some people across the border who are likely armed or certainly have malicious intent. And is that a concern? Obviously, you train your folks to deal with this, but how often does that become an issue, or does it become an issue?
It certainly has been an issue a few times. We know these smuggling groups, especially if you look at the guys smuggling cigarettes, they come through in very large numbers. They always have armed guards with them. They also have armed scouting parties who go ahead of the guards. So there has been conflict between our neighborhood watch members and farm patrollers and some of these groups. Our guys have been shot at. There have been some close calls, but they are trained tactically and legally to deal with these aspects. And they are very committed volunteers. If you think that these are guys with 95 jobs like everyone else, but at night or during their free time, they still go out and patrol and put their lives on the line to try and make a difference in their community. I think it really speaks volumes to the character of person that's involved with these operations, that they're willing to take those type of risks. But yes, you're absolutely correct. It is a dangerous job. It is a dangerous commitment. And these guys are armed and they've got nothing to lose. They're smuggling millions and millions of rands of contraband. They don't want it to get seized. they're in this on this side of the river, they're in this country illegally, they've got nothing to lose, so they won't hesitate to shoot.
Well, the reason that AfriForum is involved in this, and that you have neighborhood watches and farm watches, that sort of thing, we should go directly to, a lot of people presume the role of the state is to protect everyone. And that's a fair presumption, I think. The role of the state, in my view, is to ensure a level playing field and that there's no predation upon people. It's the role of the state to make sure everybody has a fair opportunity to succeed and survive and thrive in life and practice their faith and raise their family. But in South Africa, and in all states, there are state failures. But in South Africa, there's clearly a state failure in security. 68 people on average being murdered every day across the country. Most of them are Black South Africans. And we keep hearing about Black Lives Matter, but we don't hear the police talking about that. But the reason I've been getting to this point is that South Africa has nearly 700,000 private security guards in a country of 60 million people. 700,000 people working in private security as guards, protecting things. And this is obviously a consequence of the failure of the state. We're seeing more and more activities. We saw Solidarity, the trade union, build a technical school, essentially a college, to help educate South Africans to develop trades because the state's failing and not addressing the needs of all communities. We're seeing other actors move into spaces that are traditionally reserved or the exclusive purview or monopoly of the state. And I suspect that in South Africa, we can continue to see that. People now out fixing potholes and roads on their own because there's no state there. All sorts of things happening. Is my assessment, do you think it's valid that the reason that AfriForum and other groups have to step into there because of state failure? And what does this mean, do you think, going forward for South Africans? Are South Africans become more self-reliant and do for themselves and forget about the role of the state?
I think your assessment is 100% spot on there. And I think when you end up in a situation like South Africa, where we're very close to being able to describe the country describe it as a failed state. Some people would say we're already there, but we see the practical results of a lack of governance everywhere you go. So you mentioned potholes, you see it in healthcare, you see it in safety and security, you see it everywhere. And that very much brings you to two options. Are you going to sit and complain about it, or you're going to do something about it? And at AfriForum, we prefer to get involved and do things ourselves, while still holding government responsible and still, keeping them on their toes. We also get involved and we do things ourselves, and we make sure it gets done right and it gets done. And it's simply because there's a necessity for these things to happen. People living in the border areas like Messina, for instance, and all our other neighborhood watches across the country can either sit and feel like victims, or they can empower themselves and get involved and keep their community safe. And that's the attitude that we follow at AfriForum, and that's the attitude that our members and our patrollers also follow.
Well, I should just focus on that for just a moment, because, of course, I have an international audience, people from all around the world that aren't familiar with AfriForum, or they only know about it by what the media. By the way, South Africa's media, according to an international survey, is the second most trusted media on the planet. I'm still trying to digest that one. That's, but anyway. But as
a former journalist, I would have to say that I disagree.
Well, so would I. I would say I would disagree, and I'm still laughing having read that survey last week. 90,000 respondents. I wonder where these respondents were. Were they all sitting in Davos? That was second most trusted media. That's pretty entertaining. But anyway, so you mentioned members, and this, I want to bring this up briefly before we talk about the documentary and the dogs and wrap up. Is that people should understand that, and please clarify what I've got wrong or fill in the gaps here. AfriForum is a private civic organization. It doesn't receive funding from the state, to my knowledge. It's all member donations. And we're not talking about, some billionaire giving you a ton of money. It's mostly small donations from people who participate. You have members who are white, who are Black, who are colored and Indian from across South African society, which I think is an important distinction. Any South African can join it and contribute to it. What did I get wrong? Is that how you fund yourself? And then what's your membership look like? Is that the accurate description of how? I'm not giving percentage. I'm just saying that all those folks are members. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. We have more than 300,000 members who all contribute a small amount each month, and that's what keeps us strong. We don't have anyone who can pull funding or tell us that they're going to stop funding us if we don't do things a certain way, and that makes it easy for us to stick to our principles. And that's exactly the way we prefer it. So yes, we're a non-governmental civil rights organization, and we're involved in various aspects in the country, from keeping government on their toes through court cases, and then also through doing a lot of things practically ourselves, and also fighting a lot of corruption and misspending.
You mentioned earlier in the interview this documentary that AfriForums produced recently. I'll hesitate to call you the star of it, but you were sort of the narrator of it. You were in this movie. Can you tell us a little bit about it and where people can find it? Because I think most people outside South Africa have never heard of this documentary. It's a very powerful one. I've actually not seen the whole thing, but I've seen segments of it, and I was very impressed by it. Can you tell us a little bit about it and what drove the desire to make it?
Sure. So the documentary is called Open Borders, and it's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek comment on, the leftist push for borderless society and looking at the consequences of not having border control. And you can find it on AfriForum's YouTube channel. If you just Google, type in Open Borders on YouTube, it should be the first one that pops up. And the reason we made this was because we've been aware for a long time of the amazing work that our neighborhood watch patrollers in the Messina area has been doing. We wanted to showcase that commitment and to showcase the problems that we look at and show the reality, what it's really like there, how easy it is to cross over that border and to look at all the negative consequences that come from the border control. So what the documentary is about is we went to Messina and we spent some time there, and we spent some time with our patrollers going out at night, setting up ambushes for cigarette smugglers. And I think the documentary came out very well. But I have to agree with you there. I'm definitely not the star. The star of that show are our patrollers and our volunteers in Messina who do this on a daily or bi-weekly basis to volunteer to put themselves on the line the way they do.
Now, recently in April of this year in 2022, we saw that the negligence for maintenance of storm drainage, proper road construction repairs, and a failure in coordinating emergency services all led to a natural disaster that became a just horrible failure in KwaZulu-Natal with massive amounts of rain falling. But then, of course, the climate zealots run out and say it's climate change. Well, there may be a climate change element to it, but there's a lot of governance failure and neglect here. Do you see civic organizations beginning to move into that segment of society, clean up their own storm drains, clean their highways and such? I mean, we see a lot of that here in America, not because of natural disasters, just because of civic involvement. Is that something that's already taking place in South Africa, or do you see it coming in the future? And would AfriForum play a role in that, do you think?
It's definitely already happening. AfriForum regularly fixes potholes in various towns across the country that we either get sponsors for or we use member funding. So there's no government involvement. It's just there's no point in trying to get government to do the jobs because all your complaints are going to fall on deaf ears. So it's definitely already happening. I'm sure it's going to spread out larger to other services as well. Once again, just speaking on AfriForum's behalf, we also have fire teams in various towns and structured areas. So we actually respond to wildfires and all kinds of fires because we know that often the South African fire service is simply unreliable. And once again, not blaming the firemen themselves, but just this political mismanagement of the entire system. So I definitely see that happening more. And I think that's the only and also very practical solution to the challenges that we face.
Well, since you mentioned firefighting, that's interesting one because in South Africa, it's not a particularly well-watered country. Only 13% of the land is arable, and all the country is suffering from water shortages in the aggregate. But that has a lot to do with the fact 60 million people live mostly in semi-desert and high desert chaparral. That's probably got something to do with it. But you mentioned firefighters. So very quickly on that matter, in 2020, November 2020, at Senegal, at the second court appearance for the accused, who were later not the ones apparently who were involved in the murder of young Brendan Horner, a farm manager, the Economic Freedom Fighters political party stood up on a stage violating lockdown regulations on gatherings with thousands of people closely gathered, not maintaining social distance. Their number three in the party stood on the stage singing and chanting in an Nguni-based language, and then intentionally switched to English so that folks like myself wouldn't misunderstand what they're saying, as they were singing, "Burn the Boer, burn them down, burn them out." Within 72 hours, we saw 92,000 hectares of farmland in the Free State and also the Northern Cape go up in flames. Now, the government response to this was that in the Free State, these were service delivery protests. Of course, there was a curfew and no one's allowed to be out at 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. for a service delivery protest. And most people do public protests tend to do it in urban centers where it will get attention, not on a remote rural highway in the middle of the Free State where nobody lives next to a agricultural field and lights tires on fire at 4 o'clock in the morning. So you get where I'm going with this. The plausibility of it's just not there. But my question is, did AfriForum, did any of your folks trained in firefighting have a role in helping respond to those fires? Because they were all over the Free State back in 2020.
I'm not entirely sure if we had specific members involved with those fires. I'm pretty sure we would have had. That doesn't fall under my department, so I'm not exactly sure of the details. But I certainly wouldn't be surprised if we were involved there, because that is exactly the type of thing that we focus on. Empowering people so that they can deal with these type of situations where politicians sit on their hands and look for excuses. We're the ones dealing with it. We're the ones who need to find solutions for it because it's our problems. And so I'm sure we definitely would have been involved.
A final couple questions here. And the first one is, are there any upcoming campaigns that maybe people should be aware of, new campaigns that AfriForum is starting, or is your focus on existing campaigns?
Well, Chris, we've got so many things in the pipeline. We've got so many court cases against government and against the EFF, as you just mentioned. Some of those court cases are coming up again. And then we're also in the process of planning the filming of a second installment of Open Borders, which will focus on a different border area in South Africa. So yeah, we're busy. We're staying busy, and we're still fighting the good fight.
Well, I would just make one suggestion. You're welcome to come and make an adjunct to that series on the Rio Grande River here in the United States. So we also have Open Borders, courtesy of Joe Biden, who seems to have forgotten his primary responsibility is national security. Anyway, but I'll leave that there. So the final one here, and this is kind of hopefully a heartwarming question, is that the two dogs, the working dogs that you've got, their names were mentioned in the press. So apparently they're not like secret agents. We can mention their names. What are the names of the dogs, and how is it going? Because working dogs, my experience as a law enforcement official and in uniform for the military, is working dogs play a key role in lots of things, particularly in law enforcement, but also aside from that, you have working dogs for people who have physical disabilities and mental issues and traumatic stress responses and PTSD. But how are they doing? Is it working out well? And what are the dogs' names?
So it's a male and a female called Duke and Haley. They're two long-hair Alsatians. Both are trained trackers, but Duke is also specifically trained in smuggling out firearms and narcotics. So he can also be utilized in roadblocks, for instance, where we work with law enforcement to capture some of these smugglers and apprehend this contraband. And then obviously both of them will be used to track down smuggling groups who cross through dense bush area. These people know those areas very well. They know exactly where to pass and where to go to stay undetected. And often what the case will be is we'll just find cut fences and tracks disappearing into the bush. So the dogs will, in that case, be very handy to get on the trail of those smugglers very quickly and catch up with them. So two lovely dogs. They've been handed over to our Messina Neighborhood Watch. They're busy working with the trainer there now to get used to the new handler because they had a previous handler. So that might take a few weeks just to get them in shape again before they start operating. But they seem to be very happy. They've been warmly welcomed. And both of them have already have active careers in the security industry. They all have experience. They're not newly trained dogs. So we believe that they'll just fall back into rhythm very quickly.
Well, Jacques, thank you very much for your time today and for explaining the Open Borders documentary so people can become aware of it and check it out. Also, AfriForum has its own television station now, doesn't it? Did I get that right? There's a television station out there. How do people find that? Is it on YouTube or it's a separate server?
Yeah, it's a separate streaming service that we launched. It's AfriForum TV.co.za. So in English, that would just be AfriForum TV.co.za, spelled the same way. And yeah, it's a lot of Afrikaans content that we produce ourselves, and we were working with a lot of outside producers as well to create more Afrikaans content.
Yeah, no, I think the first thing I watched on there when I checked it out was a cartoon for kids about Jan van Riebeck, the terrible man who came to South Africa 2,000 years ago and colonized.
2,000. The man who brought us load shedding.
2,000 years ago. What? 1652? Somebody's bad at math. Anyway. All right. Well, Jacques Broodryk, thank you so much. Bye-bye, donkey. Appreciate your time. And we look forward to hearing more from AfriForum in the future. Love the baobab drawing behind you there. It's awesome.
Thank you very much, Chris, and thanks for your time.